There's no conscience. Just hunger. The rider's going to come out. And when he does, he'll destroy whoever's got it coming.
He'll take on a new form. One more powerful than he's ever known.
I'm not afraid of you.
We should be.
What if you have to pee while you're on fire?
Oh, it's awesome.
Welcome to They Call This a Movie, testing the strength of friendships one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Call This a Movie, and find us on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. Welcome back to They Call This a Movie. This is Anthony Delvecchio, and with me, as always, is Dan Aquino and Mark Meyer. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hey, friends.
Hello. I think I realized something over the weekend, and mostly yesterday, about me as I get older. I'm more interested in, as the kids call it, the tea when situations happen. So just to be quick, the niece that plays softball and all that, there was a whole thing between the parents this weekend that they basically accused the coach of stealing the fundraiser money, and then said that he's a bad coach and because he doesn't practice. And I read all the messages from the parents' chat and all that my sister gave, and it was the most entertainment that I've had in a long time. You hear about this stuff through TikTok and all that, and then to see it up close, I'm like, oh, this is why people like this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is great.
Let us go on the record that
Yeah.
this is all alleged. Nothing has been proven in a court of law. So just to cover our asses.
Yep, allegedly. For entertainment purposes only. Yeah, and the best part is that the parent we suspect wrote the letter and did all his accusations. Name is Karen. So that's just mwah.
Mm.
So
That was
yeah,
a chef's kiss for
chef's
anybody.
kiss.
This is not a visual medium.
Maybe it should be. It was fun. Yeah, so that's been the last 2 days, just finding all this stuff that's trickling through. It's been fun. Now I know why those TikToks are fairly popular.
Okay, cool. All right, well, before we get into this week's movie, we actually got an email this week from a listener, goes by the name of Vince, and he had a couple of questions for us, and they're pretty simple questions, but figured put this out ahead of our talk about this week's movie, and just wanted to give out a shout out to Vince. Vince, thanks for listening, and thanks for your questions, and he also does have some suggestions that, some of these we we'll put on the old calendar. First question was, how do you guys find a movie to be featured in an episode? We all shortlist a couple of them and vote amongst friends, letting the spinning wheel decide, ? Essentially, it's the first one. We have a short list of movies. We have a Google Doc that we put together, and usually we do it that we all go one after the other and choosing movies, and we do it that way. Every end of the month, as we mentioned, which is one of these episodes, we will do a movie of the month that is voted on by our Twitter followers at TicTamPod, and that is how we decide those. But most of the time, we do just have a list, and each of us will just throw movies on there as it goes along.
Yeah, it's essentially, we come up with it separately. There's no here's a movie I'm thinking of, groupthink, sort of, or here's a bunch of movies, which one? We'll come up with it, and normally we'll just run it by mainly Ant and just go, too good, and either get scolded at or said, yeah, well, we'll do it, and be able to put it on the list. But if you've listened to this show long enough, you know there are banned categories, so we have to work around that. But yeah, overall, it's just essentially just personally, I don't know if you guys have a thing, is I like to, if I think of a movie or I see one that's on Tubi or any of the streaming services, I will go to the IMDb, and if it's between a 4 and a 6, for the most part, I will try and see if we can do it.
I just panic pick movies. And we have a group chat, and will message us, say, hey, Dan, it's your pick. We need to know what we're doing. Like, oh, all right, give me 5 seconds, and then I'll Google something, or I'll get a suggestion from a friend. But most of the time, I kind of do what Mark does, but I'll check Letterboxd, and I'll just start typing away anything that seems interesting to me. And that's mostly my method, just spray and pray kind of thing. And yeah, I think it's worked out pretty well.
Sure. Yeah, I will say at the beginning of this podcast, how we used to do it was that we used to do it based on a upcoming movie. So usually we would try and align it to a movie that was coming out this week. But after the pandemic, when movies stopped premiering in theaters, we kind of switched to this idea of each of us getting a pick once a week and then rotating that. So that's how we've kind of kept that format ever since 2020, and it's worked out for us. But yeah, what I usually do when I'm picking movies, I like to switch up the genres from time to time. I think I try to keep everything fresh, so we're not accidentally talking about movies that are very similar. We've done that a couple times, but not too often. We're usually pretty good at that. And there is the kind of ambiguous, is this movie too good for our podcast? And that's kind of nebulous, and it changes from time to time, but it is sort of a gut check feeling. The most famous one is Mark suggesting Clue.
Yes.
Which 100% offended by the suggestion that Clue would have anything to talk about, because Clue is a fantastic film. But we've also done RoboCop, but RoboCop is genre-y, and it's camp. It's campy. It's got a genre feel to it. It's sci-fi. It kind of is in line with kind of what we're going for, despite being, a 10 out of 10. I personally try and avoid movies like the movie we're watching today. There's something not special about bad big budget films from this particular era between the years 2005 and 2015. Nothing special about these movies, and we're going to talk about one that I feel fits that mold. So I usually try and avoid those. We've talked a good deal for a long time about mid-2000s comedies and just the culture around those years of them being a cesspool, and I don't really find a whole lot of interest in talking about those films. I think for the most part, our biggest year is 1987. Just seems to happen that way, that a lot of movies that we covered comes from 1987. I do love finding a good 1980s, early 90s little gem.
Yeah.
I won't go on IMDb. What I usually do is Letterboxd, and I try and find 2-star or 5-star movie like ratings and see what they are. The shorter the better, so I can just kind of get what people are talking about and seeing if these is something interesting that I would want to talk about.
It's okay. I'll be the dinosaur that uses IMDb.
But yeah, is this movie too good? And if it's not, then we give it a go. I try not to be too hard on it. Maybe I don't know how well I'm succeeding on like kind of vetoing things.
I think you're fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we know our top level.
Yeah.
Which is Clue. So.
Right. I think when it comes to a movie like Clue, I was like, what are we going to make fun of it about?
No.
Yeah.
Right. It's in on the joke.
Yeah.
But that's real. I mean, those are really how we decide those things. Usually, if we have a guest on, I will ask them ahead of time. If there's a movie that you really want to cover, that we'll usually send them their list of what's upcoming, and I'll say, but if there's anything that you want to talk about, if there's a bad movie you love, we can talk about it if we haven't covered it already. Or I tell them like, here, pick one of the movies that we're doing next. Then we have our usual like Valentine's Day movies that we do. We do our our Leprechaun movies, and then every October, we'll do horror movies. From there, if there's something special, sometimes it'll pop up that will cover something. And when Super Mario Brothers came out, we were like, oh, we probably should do Super Mario Brothers the original, but we never did. But that was an obvious kind of theme that we were thinking about.
Yeah.
Neil Breen. We try to cover Neil Breen at least once a year, right?
Once a year. Stalked by My Doctor sequels have become a tradition. I think we're running out of them, but
which is surprising. There's like 20 of them.
I think there's only 5. We
Only
could always go
5.
back and I think we could go back and we never watched the first one.
That we're gonna get there eventually.
Yeah. So Vince had a couple more questions, but they're all kind of been answered. Any stipulations upon deciding film to be roasted / reviewed? How do you guys decide a movie to be commented on? Yeah, I think we kind of answered all those questions. But yeah, thanks, Vince. Once again, if you have any questions, comments you want us to answer, hit us up, tictampod@gmail.com. Twitter is also a great place to get a hold of us at tictampod. So thanks, Vince, and thank you anybody else that throws in some questions. Feel free to questions and or suggestions. So this week was our May movie of the month, and we're coming to the end of May, guys, which is insane already.
Yeah,
By the time you hear this, we're just about on the precipice of Memorial Day weekend. So probably could have done a pro-America, pro-military, but we decided to celebrate the greatest living American actor ever.
That's how we did it.
Yes. And we decided to call this Nicolas MAY-ge month. Nicolas MAY-ge movie of the month. And we pitted 3 movies that were voted on by our followers on Twitter. It was Deadfall, it was Drive Angry, and this week's winner, which was Dan's pick. So Dan, why don't you introduce the movie you picked?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to everyone who voted on Twitter. Feels good to be a winner and to take one for Mark finally, to topple that empire, as it were. Yeah, the film that I chose for the poll is the 2011 sequel to Ghost Rider, titled Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, the popular comic book character Ghost Rider. And I know at the start of the podcast, Ant, you said that you weren't a fan of this. I too was not a fan of this, but I feel as if this movie was a gift that just kept on giving, I thought. And I am very, very much looking forward to diving into a movie where I think Nicolas Cage kind of realized how absurd everything was and just went totally off the deep end, and no one could rein him in.
There's one particular scene that
one. I'm telling you, there's more than one.
There was one where I was like, oh, they just let him do what he wanted. Like when that scene occurred, I was like, yep, okay, this is full on, like full Cage, as he calls it.
Yes, yeah. To me, it was almost every scene he was in where his decision to play Ghost Rider as a cocaine addict or a heroin junkie. Definitely a choice. Listen, this was in 2011. So Iron Man had come out, Avengers was on deck. So Marvel had no excuse to drop the ball on this. They were in the peak. Like they were just starting to get up to that peak where like Marvel was going to take over the landscape, and they just fucking blew it here.
I thought the rights went back to Marvel after this? Or was this one of those weird movies? Or
it was Columbia Pictures distributed it, so it wasn't. I guess it wasn't Marvel at that time.
The only reason I say that, Dan, is because I'm pretty sure with what they were doing, we would have seen Ghost Rider in one of the MCU movies.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any plans to bring him back in. I know there was rumors of him showing up in like the Doctor Strange movie, and that didn't pan out. Everyone has a hard-on for bringing Nick Cage into their superhero movies now, but as like nostalgia.
He's already been in Marvel, so.
Well, I mean, like, so the Flash movie, supposedly there's a shot of him as Superman, and they wanted to bring him back for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So everyone's just like, yeah, we got to get Nick Cage for some reason.
Should have just let him be noir Spider-Man. And
yeah, everyone loves him as that. But I don't think he's going to be in the new Spider-Verse movie. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Mark, where are you coming from? Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance.
So somehow I avoided both of these movies. There were bits and pieces of this that I sort of had to pick up on the fly, which is fine. It's very surface level stuff anyway in this movie. I was both excited and disappointed to see both Idris Elba and Anthony Stewart Head from Buffy in the opening scene of this movie. And I'm like, oh, they needed some money, didn't they? Then you got to remember, I think this Idris Elba hadn't really broke out yet in terms of he didn't need to do a Ghost Rider sequel. But everything about this movie just seemed like you said, Dan, they just let Nick Cage do what he wanted. And the one scene where they're interrogating the guy that does the dirty work for the main villain in that club, where he's like transforming in and out of Ghost Rider, is the moment that clicked in my head. I'm like, oh, they just let him do, whatever. I'm like, okay, yeah. But the really weird stuff is, without seeing the first movie, I didn't have much comparison to how much worse the CGI is in this. I hear the skull is better in this one than in the first one.
The overall design of him is far better.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So, and I kind of like that. That might have been like my favorite part of the movie, was just kind of his look and the bike and the chains. Just the whole way they did his character in this seemed very badass, and seemed like they learned a lesson from the first movie by how much attention they paid to it. The fun thing was, as soon as they got to a point where they mentioned where the demon inside Cage comes from, my first thought in my head was, oh, he's going to have blue flames by the end of this movie, because blue flame is how you know good evil. And then that's basically how the movie ends. So way to stick to what the stereotype would be, guys. But yeah, I feel like this is one of those movies that if they would have gotten a little bit better of writing, they may have gotten better actors for it. I heard, a couple actors turned it down after reading like the first couple pages of the script to like fill some of the parts, like the damsel. You definitely needed someone a little bit better there. Child actors are child actors. That's, hit or miss. So I can't say, oh, they should have got like the next Daniel Radcliffe to play the boy. But I think Christopher Lambert was underutilized. It was a very interesting movie without knowing much about Ghost Rider at all as a character. The CGI was well overdone. They seemed to like the go into darkness fights a lot, which was only cool in one scene. The rest of the time, it just seemed awful. And there wasn't enough Ghost Rider taking the souls out of people. As much as I love them, as much as I love them burning with that was pretty cool when he whipped the chain at them and they just disintegrate. That was cool, but there wasn't much, taking the soul out, which is, I feel, his main thing.
Yeah, the penance stare.
Yeah, it's a PG-13 movie, if I'm not mistaken, which makes a lot of sense why that is not in there.
I think there's a way to go about that, though. It's basically, so the penance stare is, he shows you, and is probably, I could hear him rolling his eyes right now as I'm about to nerd out. But the penance stare is essentially, he shows you all the bad deeds that you've done, and all the pain that you've inflicted on others comes back to you tenfold, and you basically just die. Like, it just destroys your soul.
Yeah,
you could probably get around that without giving it an R rating.
Yeah, maybe, but it seemed to not have enough of that in there, and he didn't even get to do that with any of the main villains. And Dan, you might know better, not obviously, when I don't know, I said might, like I'm going to pull some Ghost Rider knowledge out. I'm assuming that character turning into Decay or whatever was supposed to be a big reveal, which was completely lost on me.
Yeah, I think, I want to say he plays a character called Blackout, and Blackout's actually a pretty big character in the comics. He's I want to say he's like right underneath Mephisto and Blackheart. There's a lot of like demon stuff going on there. So
there's Mephisto again.
Yeah, he literally is like the main villain for.
No, I know.
he runs hell. So,
but yeah. Besides that, the story is pretty good. I wish there was less. I wish you could have shifted the movie a little bit. Like, I would have loved to have spent more time with Idris Elba and Christopher. I'm going to say Lambert, but I might be he might just do it Lambert.
I think it's Lambert.
Yeah, that's where
I
that's
don't know
how
if
I
I've
was
ever
saying.
heard. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone pronounce it. I always said Lambert.
Yeah,
Either way.
So.
If Chris, if you're out there, reach out. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, or if anybody in the audience knows. Yeah, but spent a little bit more time with that. That like Catholic or Christian, whatever group they were. You spend all that time putting all those tattoo makeup on him, and you use him very little.
Well,
in the
they only had to
movie.
do it for one day.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
once.
I think I read in the trivia that it was like two days, and he decided they told him how long it would take to take it off, and so he just decided to just go back to his hotel with it all still on his head, face.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's what I would do too. But yeah, essentially that there was, some fun in the movie, mainly just the times Nick Cage freaked out, and there was some cool use of Ghost Rider and all that. But overall, the movie it has one plot point, and everything else just seems muddled with it. Like they don't try to really connect anything, unless if you're supposed to go in with the knowledge of the comics. But yeah, very, very forgettable movie.
Okay. As for me, I've never seen a Ghost Rider movie. Who cares? Honestly, that's what it felt like. Who the fuck cares? This was a movie that Donald Logue said no to. He was in the first one, and he might have died. I have no fucking clue because I didn't watch it. But yeah, I'm looking at the cast of the first one. Nicolas Cage, Eva Mendes said no. Sam Elliott said no. Brett Cullen said no. Peter Fonda said no. Wes Bentley even said, nah, maybe not. This feels like a direct-to-video movie that Nicolas Cage got stuck in because he had to pay the tax man. Really. Yeah. That's the only reason why this movie has a theatrical release is because they got Nicolas Cage in it before they could just put Nicolas Cage movies direct-to-video in it. This has half the budget of the original, and yeah, it looks like it. I mean, yeah, I'm looking at clips of the original, and the CG on the head is terrible.
You know what? In the first movie, he looks like a child with an oversized jacket. Like he doesn't fit the jacket.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like he used to weigh 300 pounds, and now he weighs 100 pounds. Mm-hmm. That's essentially what his outfit looks like. In this movie, he looks far better.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't really know much about the character, but I feel like Nicolas Cage is too old for this role.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
He has that like one VO in the beginning, and he's like kind of when he's just going through. He's basically just catching us up for what happened the first time, and he's addressing the audience, and it's like, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, "Hey, kid, something or other." I'm like, no one's calling you kid.
Hey, old man.
Yeah, that's probably closer. Yeah, he's probably like 5 years younger than Peter Fonda.
Yeah, I didn't like how they transitioned from live action to the cartoon. It felt very stilted.
Felt very budgetary conscious.
Mm-hmm. I have in my notes, this feels like an asylum film.
Yeah,
it's like something called like Skull Rider instead of Ghost Rider.
Yeah, I also didn't understand the Jerry Springer catching a stray in this movie.
Yeah, what was that? R.I.P. By the way.
Yeah. The rest of them, I'm like, okay, I can see where you're going. And Jerry Springer's at the end. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck?
Granted, he put on sleazy TV, but I don't think he was the devil incarnate.
No, and it was all staged anyway.
Right.
Yeah, it was like they showed like Vlad the Impaler and Joseph Stalin and Jerry Springer.
Maybe if this was 2011, it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah,
you had to be there, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's crazy that, Mark, you said that you liked seeing Idris Elba in this movie, and you got to feel for Idris Elba. I mean, obviously not too bad because he's devilishly handsome and just like great in everything he does. But his Marvel record is 0 for 2. They just grossly misused him in this and in the Thor series.
And do you think he just owns those contact lenses?
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. Right.
Like he just comes
the
in,
amber eyes or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, All right, so you guys got to roll for me. So I got these contact lenses that I can wear.
Yeah, just
Think
bring
they'll
him
work?
along.
Yeah,
He-
he's kind of box office poison, right? The
Idris
Gunslinger
Elba?
series.
Whoa.
Yeah, the Dark Tower.
Yeah. Pacific Rim, I don't remember that doing. I think that did okay
Yeah.
in the box office, but I guess it was underwhelming in.
Prometheus.
Oh gosh, yeah, Prometheus. Which again, I would blame the story more than I would blame Idris Elba.
Yeah, I'm just
Is
giving him
he-
shit.
Yeah.
And
You
if
gotta bring him down
wants
a
to talk,
peg.
he wants to talk about it. He can come on this podcast. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
How quickly would we shit our pants if Idris Elba came on here and started cracking down on us?
Maybe we can get him on and we could talk about the Dark Tower.
What happened?
I mean, that's
a tough
not the thing I
show.
would do if Idris Elba showed up on this podcast.
Would you pop
I
a big boner?
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
you?
shit my pants. Yeah.
Big old boner for Mark.
As Ann would say, I'd go 6 to midnight real fast.
So I think my wife would join us.
Oh yeah, she's gonna come on for that episode.
Yeah, and it would get pretty weird pretty quick, I'd imagine.
Yeah, she's just laughing at everything he says.
Yeah,
It's so funny.
You
Oh
could,
my
yeah,
god.
you could see her twirling her hair a little bit. Oh, I bet you say that to all the girls.
Yeah. I mean,
Dark Tower. I love the Dark Tower. I read that so many times.
yeah, she'd do that 100%. She'd pretend like it was a good movie.
I would be upset if she didn't flirt hardcore with Idris Elba. Like, what are you doing? You're wasting your opportunity. Get in there.
For him or Frank Stallone, what would be the harder flirt?
It's no question Idris Elba. If she decided it was Frank Stallone, I'd leave her. Like, no one chooses Frank Stallone over Idris Elba in this household, young lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I would love to discuss what went wrong with Idris Elba there, but I know I would fold like a cheap suit the second he gave us pushback. Like, what's wrong with it? You think it's a bad movie? Oh no, God, no! I loved it. I don't know what these two fuckers are talking about. You're don't hurt me. Yeah. Oh, 100% spineless.
So, Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance from 2011 is directed by Mark Neville Dean and Brian Taylor, and we have covered these idiots before for Gamer. It also directed Crank High Voltage Crank and The Vatican Tapes. Also wrote Jonah Hex.
Ooh, that might be one of the worst comic book movies, but written by David S. Goyer.
This film?
Yeah, who wrote The Dark Knight.
Yeah, he's a little up and down. I
Yeah.
feel like The Dark Knight is not the.
Ooh, yeah, 'cause then
It's
he wrote
not the
Dark
rule.
City.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
good
the
point.
outlier.
What's The Sandman, the new Hellraiser,
Terminator
Batman
Dark
v
Fate.
Superman. Yeah, not
Da
great.
Vinci's-
Constantine.
Yeah, Man of Steel.
Yeah, some real stinkers in there.
Jumper.
We've covered Jumper. Yeah.
Blade Trinity.
Yeah, so it's a little hitter of the Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys. That's great.
Dollman versus Demonic Toys.
Oh wow, that's insane.
What does he doesn't have a writing credit on that. What is that? He wrote the Puppet Masters.
So I think it just says uncredited.
So he wrote Demonic Toys, so he gets characters by credit for Dollman versus Demonic Toys.
Gotcha. Okay, but still wrote Demonic Toys. So
Yeah.
that is a really up and down list right there, man.
Yeah. It stars Nicolas Cage, Kieran Hines, Idris Elba, Violante Placido, Johnny Whitworth, Fergus Reardon, Anthony Head, Christopher Lambert. NB score of 4.3 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 18%. Budget $57 million. Box office 51 domestic, $132 million worldwide.
Yeah,
Must have played in Romania.
Yeah, it made like double its money back or more. I don't.
I'd say it probably broke close to even, right?
Yeah,
if
with
budget was
like, marketing
51.
stuff.
Yeah. So I would say maybe it either broke even or made a little bit of made a little money.
Okay.
But
I mean, more than I would have expected, to be honest.
yeah, because I mean, this is genuinely or generally panned by everybody.
Yeah.
So I'll put it this way: the first time I watched this movie, I had just gotten my tooth ripped out at the dentist, and I was watching this, and the movie caused me more pain than my ripped out tooth.
Hi-oh.
Yeah, there we go.
You guys want to get into the plot?
Let's do it.
All right, Dan, what do you got?
Just want to take a quick moment to shout out two friends of the podcast. First, I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go the top 10 with Tia. It consists of our good friend Tia and Brittany. Tia, we've had on the show several times. She's awesome. She has a podcast called The Top 10 with Tia. It's a weekly podcast where her and Brittany run down their top 10 list of the week. If that strikes you as interesting, if you want to listen to it, head on over to geekvibesnation.com, search Top 10 with Tia. It'll pop right up. And if you're more into video games, well, we have a podcast for you called the Game Vault Podcast, consisting of our good friend Mark here and two other friends of ours of the podcast, Jen and Tom. It's a bi-weekly podcast airing every other Monday where they discuss news stories in the gaming world, old school games, games they're playing, stuff you should be looking out for. It's a very entertaining podcast. Highly recommend you go check it out. And they also stream on Twitch at Game Vault Pod. So please go check them out there, as well as their socials. Follow them at Game Vault Pod on all socials across the board.
Okay, great. And we're going to take a quick break, and you guys are going to listen to messages from friends of the podcast. So we will be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Steve.
And this is Adam.
And we're part of the Hop Nation USA podcast,
Pittsburgh's #3 craft beer podcast.
Join us every Friday for new beer reviews.
We'll talk about the news, history, and homebrewing.
Plus, we'll sit down with the best brewers and industry personalities that'll have us.
So whether you're a casual drinker, a hazy boy hophead,
or even if you're a whale hunting cellar hoarder,
just search Hop Nation USA on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher and join the nation.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. It's me, George, from the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest at least. We've talked about groundbreaking classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Alien, but we've also got a lot of great ones coming up, including some very fun guests like Len Kabaczynski of Swamp Zombies and Red Letter Media fame, Caroline Williams, the star of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and Chase Williamson from John Dies at the End. So make sure you're subscribed to the best little horror house in Philly, and I'll see you boils and ghouls over there.
And welcome back. Now it's time to get into the plot for Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. We open on Eastern Europe as a guy on a motorcycle speeds up a mountain road until he reaches a monastery, takes off his helmet to reveal it's Idris Elba. And I'm assuming he's not in the first movie. He approaches the monks, asking them if the rumors of finding the boy, quote unquote, are true. The monks answer in the affirmative. Idris Elba Moreau tells the monk Benedict, played by Anthony Head, that it is not safe in the monastery because the devil himself is searching for the boy. The only place he can be safe is in the sanctuary.
I'm assuming they're supposed to be the Knights Templar, maybe? Because they have just way too much technology to just be like some random, I was going to say cult because that's pretty much what they are. But, some monks or something. Just some random monks.
I don't know anything about the Knights Templar, but I'm going to take your word for it.
I'm basing it all off Assassin's Creed games where the Knights Templar have all the technology. So
Sure. Yeah. It's in a video game. It must be true.
Yeah, that's what they say.
They wouldn't lie to us.
No, ever.
And the only one that could take the boy to the sanctuary is the rider. Benedict scoffs and says they'll be safe in this very high-tech monastery. And immediately a bunch of gunmen storm the monastery and start opening fire on all the monks. Wish they had guns, I bet.
Classic movie trope.
Yeah.
Right? There's nowhere safer than here. And then literally after those words are done, the place gets demolished or raided.
Yeah, just AR-15s, just gunning down dudes in robes.
Yeah. Well, what stops a bad cultist with a gun? A good cultist with a gun.
Yeah.
That's the only
Too
way.
bad. Too bad they're pacifists.
Yeah. They are. So you're saying they deserved it?
I mean, look, it's your responsibility to arm yourself in this
Right.
day and age, you know?
If
Our
they had,
responsibility.
if they just armed monks and closed the doors,
Yeah,
that's their fault for not doing that.
100%.
Yeah. So now I don't feel bad for them.
Not at all. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Where is your Jesus now?
Yeah, they have all the thoughts and prayers in that place.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It's literally a building with thoughts and prayers in it.
As this happens, a woman tries to escort a child out of the monastery as she fires her gun at people that get in her way, including Moreau, who's trying to tell her that he can help her. Meanwhile, one of the guys finds Benedict and asks him where the kid is, but Benedict doesn't say, so the guy kills him outright. Woman makes her way down a stairwell and grabs a car and drives off with the kid. Moreau follows on a motorcycle, and the other guys follow behind. This all leads to a car chase, and Moreau's tire gets shot out, sending him over the mountainside and into terrible CGI slow motion as he shoots behind him as he falls.
And get used to that bad slow-mo CGI, because this movie is rife with it.
Yeah. And then credits. And we get Nicolas Cage as Johnny Blaze in a voiceover giving us a quick breakdown of the most important parts of the first movie, set in comic-style graphics. His dad died, his soul to soul, and now he harvests the souls of evil.
Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think Nick Cage cared about this voiceover? I'd give it a solid 4.
Yeah, he's probably somewhere in the middle, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah.
He's I think Nicolas Cage is one of those guys where he's going to be a professional about certain things.
Sure.
Yeah. But it varies. The level of professionalism will vary. Like, you're going to get top notch, or you're going to get, I'll do this for you, but I'm not giving you my all. So I think he's more on those lines.
Yeah, I think he was more excited to just talk about the stunt where he bears his ass.
Yeah,
more than anything else in the voiceover.
He added that. He was like, the only way I'm doing the voiceover is if I get to say I did a stunt bare-assed.
I was getting Abraxas vibes from this movie. Felt like this kid was the co-mater.
Right, that's what he is. He's supposed to bring along the apocalypse.
Right?
Yeah. And he has these weird powers that only gets used like once.
I do love, the one thing I did love about the, groups of Christianity in this movie is how they made sure everything was very vague in their words. Like, they go, so what does he need it for, Moreau? The prophecy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like,
yeah, they didn't really flesh out a lot.
That doesn't mean anything to us. And then that'll explain it, but it's like, just the way they say it, it's like any Catholic or Christian thing. It's like, no, this thing. And they just say the name of it. And if you've never heard of that thing before, you're kind of just looking at them like somebody walks up to a person never exposed to Catholicism, just goes, yeah, the Nativity.
I think it's something, it's a catch-all for a movie like this. Or
the life equation.
Yeah. Just say
exactly
a prophecy. You don't really need to go too much into the prophecy because people can kind of fill it in as they go. Like, end of the world shit, essentially.
Sometimes it feels like placeholder text.
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're going to come up with a really cool name for this. Just call it the prophecy for now.
I can't imagine that there's not a prophecy somewhere in the Ghost Rider comic books, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's the thing. Is like a lot of this movie, which we talked about, Dan, felt like some of the things. If you read the Ghost Rider comics, you got more than just even the audience that watched both movies.
Oh, I'll tell you one thing that you guys probably didn't pick up on because you don't know the comics, I'm assuming, and I would imagine the vast majority of the audience didn't pick up on it. Do you know who the boy Danny is named after?
I looked it up, but you can explain.
He's the second Ghost Rider, and he's Johnny Blaze's long lost brother.
That's it. Yeah.
Did you pick up on that in the movie? No.
Nope.
they didn't bother to give two shits about it.
They didn't want to overextend themselves if there wasn't going to be a second sequel.
Yeah, either that or they just like, this is going to be a little wink wink, like, hey, you see, we know the comics.
Yep. And then we come out of credits and Johnny Blaze is trying to sleep in some sort of abandoned church when Moreau comes waltzing through the door. Apparently he got caught on a tree when he jumped over the side, which is the worst CG I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's really bad.
And it wasn't needed.
100%. Yeah.
Because he tells them, "Oh, by the grace of God, I was saved," and there's a quick cut to him just sticking out of a tree. You don't need that. You just have, "Oh, by the grace of God, I was saved." Done.
Yeah. Yep. Because it was so bad where it's just like, yeah, you didn't need it.
Yeah, I think this movie does that a couple times.
And his head was just like enormous. I thought his head in the CG was just too big.
Yeah, it looked awkward.
Yeah, but that's just me. I hated this movie.
I want you to append that to every sentence now, and then Johnny Blaze goes off and does this. I hate this movie. The next scene.
Ugh.
Only an hour and a half left to go. And
you know what it is? It's just I prefer early bad Nick Cage.
Yeah.
I even voted for Deadfall, which wasn't my movie.
You didn't know you could vote for yourself, kind of thing.
Oh, I knew.
Yeah, I think I was talking to some coworkers today about it, where he's the most interesting actor of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Where he'll put out bangers and then he'll just put out garbage. It's almost like he's never acted before in some of these movies.
Sure.
But then he'll come out with something that's like, God, this guy's a genius.
Yep. Moreau comes through and then Johnny immediately attacks him, but Moreau basically says he's there for Johnny's help, shows him a picture of Kid. He tells him that the same forces that bestowed Johnny with his curse, i.e. the devil, same forces that are looking for this kid. Moreau tells Johnny that if he helps the kid, Moreau and his brotherhood will help him lift his own curse. Meanwhile, the woman that took the kid, Nadia, is sitting in a cafe giving the eyes to a middle-aged American man in a suit until he pockets his wedding ring and comes over to talk to her. He hums and haws at her a little, trying to awkwardly start a proposition, until the kid pops up and he embarrassingly walks away. But not until the kid manages to pick his pocket of his wallet and his wedding ring. Then they get back in the car and leave, but the guys looking for them have already tracked them down. At night, Nadia continues to drive as the kid sleeps, and then her pursuers start to attempt to run her off the road. Meanwhile, Johnny Blaze is trying to use the picture to Hulk out into Ghost Rider, and these scenes are intercut. Eventually, the goons get.
I was going to say, Nick Cage, I would love to have known the direction for the cutbacks to Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got punched in the stomach. Now they threw something at you. Like, what were they telling him to get those reactions?
Right.
I think a lot of it's because there was scenes in this movie where sometimes I feel like they just, like, Nicolas Cage did things on camera and they had no choice but to animate around what he was doing. So like there's the scenes where he's hulking out and he's just making random faces, and there's scenes where he's the Ghost Rider and he's kind of like swaying back and forth and making random hand and head movements. So I wonder if it was just like, this is how I feel he would act, and they're just gonna have to animate the Ghost Rider around me in a way.
I don't know.
I could be wrong, but there was a story I read about this movie where Nicolas Cage, wore a voodoo mask on set in order to, I guess, get into the character of the Ghost Rider, and it's again. I think this is just him expressing himself somehow. I don't know in what way, but it was his attempt at method acting, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I love it. I think that's great. That's such a only Nick Cage. If you hear that and it's like, oh yeah, like I get that. But if you hear like Leonardo DiCaprio doing it, like, oh, it's kind of a shitty thing to do. Kind of weird.
Sure. Yeah. Only Nick Cage.
Yep.
Eventually, the goons get Nadia to stop the car. Johnny Blaze turns into Ghost Rider, and he drives off before we get to see him. Nadia gets out of the car and is immediately grabbed by the goons, and the leader, Carrigan, and the kid start to get roughed up too. Nadia pleads with Carrigan, but he refuses. He then goes to shoot her, but he stops when he hears a screeching noise. And it's Ghost Rider jumping into the scene on his fiery bike and era CGI. Carrigan orders his men to kill Ghost Rider, but he immediately makes quick work of the first few and then goes to harvest one of their souls. And Carrigan grabs an RPG out of the back of the van and blows Ghost Rider up. Him and his remaining goons pile the kid into the back of the car and drive off, leaving Nadia behind. Johnny wakes up in a hospital and tries to scam some morphine out of a nurse, but she tells him she can't, and the cops are there waiting to ask him a few questions. So he tries to go to leave, and he runs into Nadia, who is also at the hospital being questioned, and then they both decide to join forces in order to save her son. Meanwhile, Rourke arrives in Europe and sets up a firewall, quote unquote, within Danny via a cell phone to prevent the rider from locating the boy.
The moment I love with here is when he's at the buying the newspaper, and the guy on the other end of the phone sort of starts describing Ghost Rider, and it's one of those very, like you just said, John Wick moments in the movie. Like, what did you say? Like, and it just made me laugh because it was very much like you would think that Rourke would be like, if you do this, maybe look out for the guy with the flaming skull.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who else is gonna be on your radar?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're a supernatural being. You know the one thing that you created could stop you.
Yeah.
It's not Spider-Man. Spider-Man's not out to get the kid.
Yeah, like you could have made a much cooler devil here by having him, when he goes, yeah, there's this one guy. He's like, motorcycle, flaming skull, get the boy on the phone. Like, sort of like he knew this was coming and he'd had to do the firewall. Like
a nipped-in beam would be, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of having him be surprised, have him be like, "Oh, fuck that guy." Yeah, give me the boy.
or even just saying, I was anticipating this.
Yeah. Like that was the one thing that, it very much felt like the Baba Yaba.
Oh yeah.
Like,
and even
the devil would know.
In that sense, in John Wick, it makes sense, right? Because he's retired, he hasn't been heard from, and all of a sudden, you hear the voice. It's like you've seen a ghost.
Exactly.
No pun intended here. Ghost Rider and all that. But yeah, the devil knows all. Right. So he would know that the Ghost Rider is going to be on his tail.
Mm-hmm. And he gives him the firewall, but advises Kerrigan to run, as the rider can still sense him. Nadia takes Johnny to one of Kerrigan's contacts and finds that he is in an old quarry. Johnny begins to transform when Nadia confirms her son and Kerrigan's location. Johnny rides there mid-transformation. Kerrigan prepares himself with an army of his men, including a rocket launcher that could hopefully defeat Johnny. But the rider appears and a battle ensues while Nadia frees Danny. Ghost Rider makes short work of the mercenaries by riding a Bagger 288 and defeats Kerrigan. As Nadia and Danny escape, the rider catches up to them and attempts to kill Nadia, but in Danny's presence, the rider is forced to turn back into Johnny Blaze, partly due to the fact that Danny is the devil's son.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think the one thing this movie did well is when Ghost Rider takes over different vehicles. He only does it twice in this movie. He does it, he has his bike, which is his standard mode of operation. He has the excavator, right? The giant one. And then he does it to like a bus or a van. And it's visually, it's pretty cool. And the way he's able to manipulate the machinery, it's interesting. I would like to see him do that more often.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned it, but the boy drops the hint, in there going, well, what happened if you picked the taxi?
Yeah.
When they were talking about the motorcycle. And it's like, they're going to show him taking over a vehicle. Like, a really bad foreshadowing.
Yeah, I just think that looks cool. I think that's something that you probably could have done more of, taking a little bit more of a liberty. Even if it was just, you could have had a gag in there where, his bike gets destroyed or something like that. And there's like a little moped or something. And the people are laughing. And then he gets on the moped and it turns into this fucking hellfire moped.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden everyone is like, oh shit, You could do some interesting things with that character there.
Sure. Rourke approaches Kerrigan, who dies in front of him. However, Rourke resurrects him as the being known as Blackout, who can render a person's environment pitch black and decay anything he touches.
Sort of. It comes and goes in this movie, let's say.
Yeah. Like there's only one cool Blackout fight scene. And it's not the one with Ghost Rider.
No, would you say it's with the monks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very the movie takes liberties with it because it seems to be anything he touches will decay, but he's seen touching cars, parts of cars, a sword, certain things that don't disintegrate in his touch.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I guess it's just whatever the movie
Carbon-based.
chooses. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe they just didn't want to have to get into it. Well, metal can't really decay that, but like carbon-based things, that could be, yeah.
But then he's decaying the fucking windshield on the car,
That's
right?
made of tiny pieces of sand to make glass. I don't fucking know, man.
Yeah.
This is your world, comics.
And I'm sitting here as a person in 2023, the year of our Lord 2023, telling you that I don't know what's going on either, and I'm more versed in this stuff. It's just I want it to make sense, and you're smart. You guys are smarter than I am, so I'm just trying to figure out maybe I missed something.
No, this movie made me feel stupid.
So stupid.
Stupid.
Rourke sustains some injuries due to his weak state on Earth and sends Blackout to retrieve Danny. Moreau catches up to the group and leads them to a sanctuary where the monks are there, including Methodius, Christopher Lambert, ensure the protection of Danny. Before the exorcism, Moreau explains to Johnny that the rider was once the angel of justice, Zarathos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these right, but I don't give a shit. But was tricked into going into hell and was driven insane. Retaining a sense of justice, Zarathos became a spirit of vengeance, an entity who took pleasure in punishing the wicked regardless of their crimes.
Yeah, it perversed his original goals of justice to just become vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool way of putting that. The way, or maybe it was just Idris Elba's voice explaining it, made me go, "Oh, that was pretty cool."
He's so fucking cool, dudes. Johnny questions if the angel's benevolent spirit still exists. Johnny is successfully exorcised, but Methodius reveals his treachery and plans to kill Danny to prevent the devil from taking over his body and achieving higher powers.
The one thing I love, minor detail just from my end, skipped over, is when basically Idris Elba's character gives Johnny Blaze Holy Communion for no reason. It doesn't help. It's like it just like, oh, they're like Catholic things, so let's have him do the entire prayer that you say over the communion.
Well, there's a deleted scene, Mark, where Nicolas Cage's character Johnny Blaze tells Idris Elba, "Oh, it's been a while since I've been to church. Could you help me out with that?" Yeah, I got you, man. I'll do the whole 9 yards for you.
Yeah.
That's why. So,
yeah.
Or maybe Nicolas Cage just really wanted the bread. I don't know.
Yeah, that whole thing. He for someone that had that prayer drilled into their head for a long time. I was like, as he started, I'm like, is he going to do the whole thing? They just he's not going to cut. Okay, fine. But it was just, again, Idris Elba was saying it, so it was the coolest fucking prayer over the communion that I've ever heard.
The director's cut is the full mass.
Yeah, if Idris Elba did a Catholic mass, I would go back to mass.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this guy had such power over you, Mark. I'm learning a lot.
He's Mark's Gerard Butler.
Sure. I feel like Jen is going to have competition in this episode where we have Idris Elba on.
That was a given.
Mark, Mark, how far are you willing to go, my man? Because I think Jen's willing to go all the way.
Yeah, full Monty.
You got to throw something in to sweeten the pot. Tickets to like a Phillies game or something.
I
can get you to meet the fanatic.
Yeah, it can be. I know the fanatic. Yeah. You can meet Gritty.
You've always wanted to meet Gritty, right?
Oh man, yeah, I would lose that fight. I'm not gonna lie.
I thought you had it, Mark. My money was on you, but now I'm not sure.
Yeah. The dark horse.
The lack of confidence is what's killing me now.
What we need to do is we need to do like a decathlon in order to win the heart of Idris Elba.
Yeah, all this is lining up to we have to figure out if I could win by getting Idris Elba on the podcast.
And it would end the final thing would be the swimsuit competition.
No, I'd 100% take that.
So let's start getting that set up. We'll that'll be for our 300th episode extravaganza.
Oh, that's pretty good. You got time.
A good time.
Yeah, plenty of time to reach out to annoy Idris Elba.
If I learned anything from people getting jobs on TikTok, have told me, all you do is just annoy them every day, and they'll eventually go, "Whoa, he must really want this." So I'll do it.
If I do this, maybe it'll shut him up.
Maybe I'll shut him up.
You hear that, people that are unemployed right now? The problem is you just don't want it bad enough.
Yep. That's what job TikTok has told me.
Have you tried pulling yourself up by your bootstraps?
Yep.
Oh, that's the number one thing you should be thinking about.
Yeah, always pulling on those bootstraps.
Or if that doesn't fail, get a $30,000 loan from your rich aunt.
Yeah,
that helps,
That's always an option.
But you see, now this is dangerous, Mark, because now that people could also take that as like, oh well, I could just keep bothering that girl that I like because
Sure.
I'm not
jobs.
bothering them.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's
Speaking
true.
of, you know how many LLCs you could open with that $30,000 from your aunt?
Exactly. You could put it in some
Well,
Roth
man.
IRAs and just.
And you know what, baby? That credit line is clean on that LLC. You take out loans on all those LLCs. It's like free money.
But listen, guys,
It's free real estate.
would you rather take the 30 grand from your aunt, or would you rather get a free dinner with Idris Elba? You're gonna learn more about making money from Idris Elba.
I mean, grind lifestyle, man.
Exactly.
Gotta take the 30,000.
Gotta take the 30,000.
Gotta grind.
So what you do is you buy with the 30,000. You buy 30,000 tomatoes. Then you plant those 30,000 tomatoes. Now what? Now you got an extra 30,000 tomatoes you sell for marked up price. There you go.
You sell those for $2 a piece.
Yeah. Bam.
Yeah.
Look at that. You've just doubled your money. You're welcome, internet. All of
That's what
those
you come here for, financial advice.
All of those things are real life conversations that have been had somewhere. Did you ever see that the one guy who posted like, oh, like, would you rather take $10 million or have dinner with Jay-Z? And the guy goes, Jay-Z, because he's gonna teach you more about making money than that 10 million will ever do for you. And everyone just like clowned on this guy for years.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Yeah, right. I wonder if that guy killed himself just from just being known as the
cyberbullying him.
just being like, every job interview. Wait a minute, you're the guy who said he would take the dinner with Jay-Z over 10 million. Guys, get in here. It's the guy.
It's that guy.
It's the Jay-Z dude. Come in and laugh at him.
Yeah, sometimes bullying does get a bad rap.
Yeah.
All right. Johnny, Moreau, and Nadia are in prison as Danny is about to be executed. Where Blackout arrives and kills Matthias and the monks. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that name 4 different ways. And he kills Matthias and the monks for taking Danny back to Rourke. Nadia is devastated by what has occurred, but Johnny swears to rescue Danny, even though his powers have been removed. Armed from the sanctuary weapons vault, the group makes their way to a Turkish Colosseum, where Rourke and his followers gather to enact the trade. Moreau distracts the followers while Johnny attempts to free Danny, but is knocked back by Rourke while Moreau is killed by Blackout. Ceremony interrupted. Rourke opts to kill Johnny in retaliation. Danny, knowing that he is his father's abilities, returns Zarathos to Johnny, who becomes more powerful and is now able to exist in daylight, appearing to be in full control as well. Danny is taken again and a chase ensues between the Rider, Nadia, Blackout, and Rourke. The Rider dispatches Blackout and causes Rourke's vehicles to crash. The Rider confronts Rourke, who declares that Johnny is the worst deal he ever made. The Rider then literally sends Rourke back to hell, slamming him into the fiery depths of the earth. Nadia catches up, but is dismayed to find the Rider pulling Danny's lifeless body from the wreck of the car. Reverting back, Johnny says that he feels the angel of justice reawaken within him once more and resurrects Danny with the angel's blue flames. Johnny then rides off, now engulfed in holy blue flames, declaring that he is the Ghost Rider. And that is the end of Ghost Rider Spirit O' Vengeance.
Yeah.
Let us never speak of it again.
Let us never speak of this again. I think this movie would have been much better if they just straight up ripped off of Terminator 2, where he has to protect this kid at all costs. Like at the very beginning, like he is with the kid, right? So he's on the search. He's on the hunt to find Danny. It's not that the kid is brought to him and he barely gives a shit at first, right? I think there you have it where he's on the run from all the agents of hell and not constantly playing catch up. I think that's a better movie.
I think it'd be a better movie if it was just Nicolas Cage and everybody else was played by Muppets.
The Ghost Rider Muppet cut. I'd watch that too. Kermit is the devil.
Yeah.
Or would Miss Piggy be the devil? Because she's a girl boss, right?
Yeah, she is a girl boss.
I think that makes more sense. And then Gonzo and Rizzo are the or the
narrators.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. I don't really have much to say about this movie. Do you guys, other than that, or can we cut to a break?
I'm looking over my notes real quick. And we talked about how Nick Cage is miscast.
Yeah.
I got the voodoo mask in there. That was good. Yep, that's it. That's it for me, Mark.
All right.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's what a trash of a
All right. So we're going to take a quick break, and you guys are going to listen to some ads so we can pay those bills. And we'll be right back with our last segment. And welcome back. Now it's time for our last segment of the night. And this week, we are doing Nicolas Cage, Fact or Fiction. Got 10 things here, 10 facts. And we are going to, this is either fact or it is fiction. Hence the name Nicolas Cage, Fact or Fiction. You guys can work together. It's not, I don't really have any sort of plan for this. This is just some fun stuff I read about Nicolas Cage, and I wanted to talk about it. So
now's the time.
Yeah. So here's the first one. Fact or fiction? He currently owns the alleged most haunted mansion in New Orleans.
Oh, that's good.
I will say false based on the word currently.
Doesn't he owns a castle, doesn't he, or something like that? I'm gonna go with Mark. I'll say false.
Okay, it is fiction because he lost it in foreclosure in 2009. It was Madame Lalaurie mansion he bought in 2007 because he wanted it to inspire him to write a book, and he lost it 2 years later.
Yep, not enough time.
Nope. He said he never got quite that far into the book. Number 2, he almost played Doctor Doom, the Scarecrow, and Aragorn.
Oh, now I've heard stories about him almost being Aragorn, so I want to say that's true.
Yeah, I want to say true, mainly because of the other two.
Okay. Yep, you guys are right. It's fact.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I would hate Lord of the Rings if he had played Aragorn. That would have been it would have gone from being my favorite movies to my least favorite movies, I think.
Okay, number 3. Nicolas Cage outbid Johnny Depp on a Tyrannosaurus skull.
I know he had the skull, but I don't know if he outbid Johnny Depp for it.
I'm going to say, for my end, I'm going to say fiction, only because he outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for it.
I think he owns an island, Nick Cage. So you gotta have some serious cheese for that. I'm gonna go against Mark this time. I'm gonna say true.
Okay, Mark is right. It was fiction. It was Leonardo DiCaprio, and he paid $300,000 for it. It later turned out to be stolen from the government of Mongolia, and he handed it back over to them.
That part I did not know.
I knew he had the skull.
So, and Dan, whenever you say he owned something, assume he doesn't own it anymore. He no longer owns most things. He has owned islands. He has owned other things, but he doesn't own them anymore.
So the weird shit he's owned, I think he only owns one thing of that.
So is he no longer like rich?
He supposedly owed like about $6 million in back taxes.
Okay.
But I believe, according to him, I believe he has been all paid up, and that's the reason why he was doing all those fucking shitty movies, that direct-to-video stuff.
That's why he did A Court of Call in New Orleans.
There you go.
Well, that's a real movie, directed by Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So good to know. If I think he owns something, he no longer does.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, number 4. He was once bailed out of jail by Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Is there a way for me to, if this ends up being false, wanting it to be true?
I desperately want that to be true as well. So I'm going to say
we'll
true.
say true.
Yeah.
It is fact. In 2011, he went to jail, and
It
he was bailed out by Dog the Bounty Hunter.
it was Dog the Bounty Hunter's last act before he died.
It's true. It's what killed him.
With his dying wish.
He was hit by a bus. Number 5. He has been married 5 times.
I'm going to say false. I don't think. I'm going to say he's been married twice, 3 times at max.
Yeah, I'll say false because I think it's...
All right. It is fact. He's been married 5 times, most recently in 2021 to Rico Shibata.
Okay.
No idea who that is, but good for him, I guess.
For him. Oh, wow.
5th time's a charm.
Number 6. He is a vegetarian.
I say fact.
That does sound like a fact. I'll say, yeah, true.
Fiction, but he only eats animals that have dignified sex, according to him. So fish and fowl.
That's even better. That's even better.
Fish and fowl are fair game, but pigs are not.
Wait.
That's even better.
Wait. Let's just wait. For like 2
What's
seconds.
there to think about, Dan?
I need Ant to repeat that whole thing.
Okay. He is not a vegetarian,
Okay.
but he only eats animals that have dignified sex. So, fish and fowl he will eat because he has decided that they have dignified sex. Pigs specifically, he will not eat.
Okay. Does he know how fish don't really have sex?
I think that's why he's okay with it.
Oh yeah, because I think it's like the female fish just shoots out an egg sac and like other things happen. Like there's no penetration.
Yeah,
but like
the egg sac comes out.
Yeah.
The male fish tips his cap and then fertilizes it. Very dignified.
Says "Milady" and then
Milady
spreads his seed. Yeah, that's weird. That's so weird.
Yep. I mean, it's only Nicolas Cage, man.
Yeah.
That is the one time in a trivia contest where, because the correct answer is so much better than if he was just a vegetarian.
Sure. All right, number 7. He once stole a chihuahua while filming Peggy Sue Got Married.
Oh, this is old school Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say true.
I'm gonna say false.
It is fiction. Kathleen Turner claimed this in her autobiography. He later sued her for libel and won.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, it was too early of Nick Cage to be.
I thought maybe he was doing it as like a goof, just having some fun, and then giving the dog back. I don't know. I guess not.
Number 8. He was the reason that Lisa Marie Presley and Michael Jackson divorced.
Yes.
Man, that. Yeah, I'll say true as well.
That is fiction. She was already divorced to Jackson when they two met, but she did break off her engagement to John Ojaka.
Damn, insane. Because all of these things are just so easily believable. It's like playing on hard mode.
Number 9. He spent a night in the ruins of the castle that inspired Dracula.
That I've heard that is definitely true.
Yeah.
In fact, during the filming of this actual movie, Spirit of Vengeance.
Oh, Jesus.
Maybe the spirit of Bram Stoker got in there and fucked him all up.
I'm glad Dan was able to be as confident in his answer as I was with the Leonardo DiCaprio one, because that's the one story I've heard.
Yeah, I had read that. I remember specifically reading that he stayed there.
And last one, he was almost arrested for impersonating a pilot on a commercial flight.
Yeah, that's got to be true. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It is fact. And part of the story is that Charlie Sheen was with him, who had an 8-ball taped to his leg.
Oh, even better. Why not, right?
Yep.
Fantastic.
And that is
pre 9/11 travel.
Yeah, this was supposedly like in 1992, I think.
Yeah.
And that was Nicolas Cage, Fact or Fiction.
Incredible.
The
man, the myth, the legend.
Yes, it was. There was a lot of other interesting stuff. Like he almost bought a cave. Who buys caves?
A random cave?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He never got to buy it though, supposedly. He did own like 15 houses at one point. This is how you don't have any more money. This is how you run into the tax man problems when you own 15 houses.
Yeah,
just buying.
He's like the weird thing equivalent of a person that just buys sports cars. Like, I have all this money. Let me buy what? I'll get a cave.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm glad that he did that stuff because he could have been the boring millionaire and bought cars and all that. But no, like I'm gonna buy a cave. I'm gonna buy a dinosaur skull that was stolen from Mongolia.
I'm gonna buy a pyramid tomb or whatever that he has.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
More people need to do that.
But that is our episode celebrating Nicolas MAY-ge month, this Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. So, who cares about this movie? Most people probably forgot about it, but it exists. It exists.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty funny. Looking back, if I would have realized or noticed before, because I just wanted you guys to see Deadfall. If I would have realized what you were calling the month, I would have just picked The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
I think that would have
Nicolas
taken over.
MAY-ge.
That's good. Clever, very clever.
Even more clever than I would have done. So, yeah.
Save it for next year. For next May.
Next MAY-ge.
Next MAY-ge. But that's our episode. So check us out on all socials. TikTam Pod on Instagram and Twitter. TikTok at They Call This a Movie. If you have any questions, comments, you want to ask us some questions about how we do things, you want to suggest a movie for us, do as Vince does and hit us up at tictampod@gmail.com. If you got a few minutes in your busy schedule, go on to your podcatcher of choice. Give us a 5-star review. Helps us out a great deal. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out. I don't even know if there's a URL, but look for They Call This Movie on YouTube, where that's where Dan posts his short versions of these episodes with a whole bunch of visuals to go along with them. It's a lot of fun to take a look at, and they're pretty funny. So those are all the places you could get a hold of us or absorb our content and all that great stuff. So that's going to wrap us up. The directors, plural, of Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance was Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. So for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is Anthony Pavecchio telling Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor once again, well, you certainly made a movie, didn't you? Thanks for listening to They Call This a Movie. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. You can also check us out on TikTok at They Call This a Movie.